Hey guys, how's it going? MarineKing here. Today I just wanted to make a quick video to answer a few questions and respond to a couple of comments on the Holy 4000 Priest deck. It's currently season 16 and we're at the end of season 16. Tomorrow is season 17, so it just gives you an idea of where we currently are in the meta. Toyo Aurora says, this deck is stupid strong. First game went super late, and when I placed 4000, he had nothing to remove it. So it ended like this, and it's really fun to play. Wow. So that's a pretty dominant victory. And to that I would say absolutely. That's really one of the things that sets Holy 4000 apart from a lot of other types of mech decks is that most mech decks, they're all about applying pressure early, and essentially they're aggro decks, because once you are in a position where they remove a couple of things early, or clear the board or anything like that, you just lose. You automatically lose, basically. And you just don't have anything really strong going into the mid and late game. Sometimes they'll run something like Dr. Boom, but aside from that, you really don't have anything with Holy 4000. You really have the ability to go a little further, and you have more reach going into the late game. So it's important to recognize that when you're playing the deck, and to not go to pieces when the enemy removes some things early or gains tempo early, because you can get it back. That's one of the good things about this deck, and you just have to get used to it, get the hang of it, and you should do pretty well. Oz Ramos says, this is the most fun I've had playing Hearthstone. I've never played Priest before. I had to unlock the basic cards before I could even play it. But after that and watching these vids, I rose the ladder really fast. By the way, your level of detail is absolutely insane. Well, thanks, Oz Ramos. It really is a fun deck. For people who have played Priest before and are looking for something a little bit different, there's not really that many decks that are different from what everyone uses typically. Akanai, Circle Hill, Blade Master, the usual things. I mean, it's pretty much the same stuff. Sometimes they'll run Death Lord with Velen's Chosen. That's kind of a little bit new, but there really hasn't been any really great solid alternatives to that type of standard Priest deck. Hasn't been anything like that since the Zeta deck, which was, for those who don't remember, that was actually when Naxxramas had come out. There was a Death Rattle Priest deck that was really strong for a short period of time. Chronolink says, this deck looks really fun. I want to try it out, but I'm missing Light Bomb. Are Holy Fire / Mind Control good replacements, or are they too slow and should consider another minion / mech? If the latter, since I don't have the full Reaper 4000, I placed Kel'Thuzad, but I do have Dr. Balanced. But what would be a good option, or perhaps another minion? Okay. Thanks for the question, Chronolink. The first thing that I would say is about the missing Light Bomb. I've done a lot of testing with this deck. I've run many different versions of it behind the scenes, and what I came to the conclusion is, as of right now in this current meta, towards the end of season 16, Light Bomb is absolutely just the MVP board clear that we run. Light Bomb is really, really important, not only to this Priest deck, but I would actually go so far as to say that Light Bomb should be run in most Priest decks right now. The reason for that is because there are a lot of too many situations where a Holy Nova just doesn't cut it. You know, a long time ago, Holy Nova and Akanai Circle Hill used to really be the answers that you would have for a lot of situations, but that's not good enough anymore, especially with Patron Warrior being so hot right now. And then you have you know, a lot of situations where you need to deal more than just 2 damage. You know, hand lock, demon lock. You know, there's just so many situations where a Light Bomb is really what you need. I would strongly suggest crafting it. Trust me, I know how that feels. You know, having to craft an epic for 400 dust, especially if you're running low on dust or if you're in need of a lot of cards. It could be like one of those cards that you keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, like I did. But you know what? It's worth it to craft that card. Run it in this deck. You will see that there's a lot of power behind that card. There's a lot of games that I won specifically because of that particular card. So a lot of people have been asking this question, you know, is Light Bomb really necessary? Can I sub something else in its place? The answer truly is no, because there's no other card that even comes close to doing what Light Bomb does. The closest thing that you can possibly run is a Deathwing, and that really has no place in this deck. So, you know, Holy Fire and Mind Control are great cards in other types of Priest decks, but you definitely need Light Bomb to work in this deck. And if you craft that card, you'll find that not only is it good in this deck, but that it's really, really good in most of the other popular Priest decks out there right now. Most Priest decks run at least 1 copy of Light Bomb, so it's definitely worth the investment if you want to play Priest and you want to win a lot of games at the higher ranks. Now, as far as Holy Fire is concerned, Holy Fire is a card that used to be in this deck, actually. So it used to be run in Holy 4000. And there's nothing wrong with running Holy 4000 with Holy Fire, but you cannot substitute Light Bomb for it. Holy Fire and Mind Control is just bad in this deck, by the way. Don't run Mind Control. If you want to run Holy Fire, I would strongly suggest that you run it in place of either one of the Holy Novas or the Antique Hillbot or one Mech Yeti. That's what I would do. Don't take out the Light Bomb. Now, Full Reaper 4000 is a pretty unique card to this deck, and a lot of people ask about, you know, what's the replacement for Full Reaper 4000, and it's just like I wrote in the guide under card replacements. Kel'Thuzad is the best replacement for Full Reaper 4000. Now, in some ways, Kel'Thuzad can be even better. It just depends upon the position of the board. But the reason that Kel'Thuzad is a very good replacement for Full Reaper is because it is another powerhouse minion that can win you the game almost instantly if left unchecked for like 1 turn. And it has some pretty good stats, and the attack is just out of Big Game Hunter range, 6 attack. And that's really important because nothing in this deck has 7 or more damage. And right now, just about everyone is running Big Game Hunter. Like, everyone is running it. Even Control Warriors that used to not run that are now running Big Game Hunter. So, you know, that's why I don't recommend Dr. Boom, because if you play Dr. Boom, he's gonna get shot, and then the only thing you'll be left with are the boom bots, which are pretty good, by the way. But I feel that you know, I really feel like Kel'Thuzad is the best replacement to that. And I would say that Sneed's Old Shredder would be the second best, because Sneed's Old Shredder, a 5/7 out of Big Game Hunter range, and you have a chance that something really awesome could come out of it. The problem with Sneed's is that it's a little bit slower when you want to really be pushing at that point in the game. But you know, the survivability though is more even than Kel'Thuzad. It's harder to get rid of it than Kel'Thuzad and Full Reaper. So in that respect, I would say that it has its strengths as well. So Sneed's is fine. Kel'Thuzad is the best replacement. Private Diddy says, now you've changed the meta, as legend streamers seem to be bandwagoning onto a watered down hybrid version of Mech Priest with Cabals and Shrink Masters. But I think this deck was the inspiration. Well, thank you very much, Private Diddy. I think that Holy 4000 was the first major mainstream deck, mech deck for Priest that took off and was really gained the level of popularity and notoriety that it had. So I would say that it probably did inspire a lot of other mech decks. But, you know, I couldn't say for sure that Holy 4000 is the most powerful mech deck for Priest. You know, some of those new mech decks that some of the pro streamers are trying out look really interesting. And I think that for their meta and for where they are at their rank and where they're playing could be even better. I mean, really, the point about Holy 4000 was just kind of to introduce a way to utilize the cards like Shadow Boxer and Repair Bot that were being overlooked. And I saw a lot of potential value there that I felt like people really, it's not that they didn't see it, but they didn't really know how to utilize it. And I think that so long as you understand the basics of Mech Priest, there's lots of room to make new decks and similar decks and completely off meta Priest Mech decks, and they might perform even stronger than Holy 4000. But you know, this probably was the inspiration for a lot of those types of decks, and that's fine. Alpharet Hearthstone says, awesome deck. I just climbed from around rank 800 legend to top 100, going 8-1. My only loss was to Rogue, which is always a tough matchup for Priest, but it destroyed all the hunters, aggro paladins, and druids I played. Everyone keep on playing Priest, down with aggro. Well, thanks a lot for that kind comment, Alpha. I would say that yes, Holy 4000 is certainly still very much viable at the legend rank. I play it at high ranks all the time. It still surprises a lot of people out there, and it's really strong against most type of deck in the current meta. Now, real quick, you made a comment about a loss to Rogue. Well, I would say that you know, oil rogues are a really tough matchup for Holy 4000. I'm sorry, but not just for Holy 4000. I didn't quote that actually isn't completely what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say was oil rogue is a tough matchup for Priest in general. That's one of the problems with Priest right now as a class, as a matter of fact. And it's actually one of the things that keeps Priest down competitively, is the fact that Rogue has pretty much always taken a major dump on Priest, and Holy 4000 addresses some of that problem, but you know, Oil Rogues, to be perfectly honest, they're always going to be favored against the Priest, and hopefully they fix that in the upcoming expansion, which is the Grand Tournament. So if you're out there and you're trying Holy 4000, you've been getting beat up by some rogues, you know, I would say to that, you know, don't worry about it. That's natural. It happens. You know, most classes have a weak matchup, and you know, that's certainly it. But on this other part of the comment that you destroyed all the hunters and the aggro paladins and the druids, absolutely. Hunter is one of the strongest matchups for Holy 4000. I play against hunters all the time with this deck, and I love the results. And I say this all the time in my videos, but it bears worth repeating. The reason that we beat up hunters really bad with this deck is because we develop boards that they cannot ignore. And a huge part of winning against Priest with Hunter is developing damage to the face and ignoring the threats. And the reason that they usually can get away with that is because most Priest decks are really slow in the early game, and if they do play something, it's usually really low damage. So by turn 5, they just don't have much of a threat on the board, and you can kind of just ignore it, keep going face, and just race them to the finish. And it becomes a situation where all the Priests can really do is just backpedal, you know, defend, heal, try to, you know, control the board in a futile attempt. And it's futile because the hunter keeps using charge minions, and even though you're trading into them and clearing them, they play more charge minions, and you're not really doing anything to stop the oncoming damage. With Holy 4000 though, we develop so much board right away, and it's the Zulok principle. It's like the same reason that Zulok wins against aggro hunter is because we end up developing this board where minions have buffed more minions and buffed more minions, and then they just die because they end up in a situation where they're like, whoa, I'm looking at 10 to 15 damage per turn, I can't race this priest to the face, and then they have to start doing things like using skill command on a minion, and you know, clearing your board, and using Unleash the Hounds to clear board and that kind of thing. And it's really hard to do. So as for aggro paladin, you know, I would absolutely say the same thing. You know, we don't hold on to any extra cards. Typical priest, you'll have 8 to 10 cards in your hand and not enough mana to play them. And then the aggro paladin will use Divine Favor, and they'll just load up their hand with a fresh new set of cards and just destroy your ass with it. With Holy 4000, we don't keep too many cards in hand. We play it very much like a mid-range hunter deck, and we just develop the board with really precise, high-value minions, and just out-trade the enemy, and just overpower them with better minion stats. And it's really hard for aggro paladins to deal with that, because they're hoping that you know, you'll have a lot of cards that they can draw off of, because their cards are weak, and they win by playing 2 to 3 weak cards for your every 1 strong card. And you know, as for druids, pretty strong against druids too. I mean, that's just priest in general though is fairly strong against druids. Druids are not in a great place against priests, because they rely on the combo wombo, and outside of that, basically they're losing. Skycutter asked a question. He says, has this deck been updated for the current vomit hand meta? It seems so, but I'm not sure how it plays. Curious to know from the designer. Um, by vomit hand, I can only assume that you mean like Demon Lock, because Demon Lock is very popular right now. And Demon Lock, they're the class that vomits hand. There's only 3 really popular decks in the meta that vomits hand. That would be Mech Mage, Shakaden, and Zulok. I mean, those are in slash Demon Lock. Those are the popular decks right now that vomit hand. And the deck has been updated for that. In fact, I wanted to make a quick mention of the fact that Holy 4000 has not changed since May the 29th. So the reason it hasn't changed is because in testing, I have not yet seen a reason to change it. This deck is pretty streamlined and it's pretty solid at the moment, and I don't think it's going to change until the Grand Tournament releases, because at this point I feel like I've really found the best, most efficient way to build this deck for this current meta. As for those type of vomit hand decks, what I would say to that is, yes, we do have a very strong chance of dealing with those types of decks, which is why we've gone back to running Shadow Word Pain for a while. A lot of Priest decks weren't running that card, but now a lot of this card has gained popularity and come back into the meta. The reason why is because of things like Flame Waker, things like Imp Gang Boss. There's just Warsong Commander. There's a lot of targets for this guy. He's really good. Shadow Word Pain against vomit hands. Shadow Boxer, low mana cost minion that can pretty much trade even. Dark Cultist gives vomit hands problems, but really important cards here that protect us. Shadow Madness. Shadow Madness is the best card that you can have against those vomit hand type of decks. We run Dual Holy Nova, we run a Light Bomb, we run Arcane Nullifier, which is really a pain in the ass for vomit hand decks, especially if on the following turn you buff up the HP with a upgrade repair bot. Then you end up with this 9 HP taunt that can't even be targeted with spells or hero powers. And then if all that fails, we have the anti-kill bot to heal ourselves back. And the Full Reaper 4000, it goes without saying how powerful Full Reaper 4000 is against a vomit hand type of deck. You play a board full of stuff and Full Reaper just destroys it with one hit. And the 9 HP makes it really fat. So how does this deck perform against vomit hands? Very well. Very well. Sometimes you do get screwed, though, by an unbelievably good start with Demon Lock. That almost can't be avoided, because sometimes they just get these unfair early game tempos because of things like egg, and then you power over, let's say you play egg, okay, next turn, power overwhelming, coin, Void Terror. Well, you just dealt 4 damage, and then you have a 4/4, and then you have this humongous Void Terror, and sometimes things just kind of spiral out of control. So, if they have the God Hand, sometimes there's not too much you can do, but that's not really a weakness of Holy 4000. That's just something that Priest is weak to in general. So Deja Vu Killer says, is there any replacement for Resurrect? I would say that Resurrect is a really strong card in this deck. This deck actually had started to become a little bit weak right before Resurrect came out. So this card, and no, I'm not, no pun intended, Resurrect actually resurrected this deck from the grave, because Resurrect, you know, it's huge. 2 mana, and you have a chance to draw back that piloted shredder, that arcane nullifier, that mech yeti, you know, or even worse, you know, it draws back like a Foe Reaper or something like that. You will just, this card can win you the game single-handedly. You know, there's a saying they have about powerful decks in the meta, that you can determine if a deck is good or not on based upon how unfair it is. That a deck needs to be unfair, a certain amount of unfair to get ahead. And I absolutely believe that every really good deck right now has some element of it that is unfair. So Resurrect is our unfair card, because it truly, you can use this card, and if you draw, if it summons something back that's 1 or 2 mana, we're okay with that. We're good with that. We're pretty much not out of anything. We run good cards, so you don't lose anything by doing that. But if you resurrect something that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana, it's unfair, and it's really good, and I would not cut that card out. You know, this is a great card to have in this deck. The best replacement that you can have for it would probably, I probably would throw in a couple of Harvest Golems. That probably would be what I would recommend. But really, this is the card you want. The King in Yellow says, so I tried it for quite a while now and never got any use for the Foe Reaper ever. Either I win before I can use him, or I lose. I'm wondering what I'm missing. Well, that's a little bit of a difficult question for me to answer, because I'd have to look at your play style. I'd have to see how your games are going, and I'd have to see you know, what you're doing with your Foe Reaper. But what I can say about that is I get use out of my Foe Reaper quite a bit, but a lot of times I do win before it comes to that, or I play it and I'm already in a winning position. It's important to understand what Foe Reaper is. Foe Reaper is an answer to a situation. The situation is the enemy, you have not won the game, and you are not really dominating the game per se. You're just kind of going even, or maybe even losing the game, and the enemy is spamming out board. Foe Reaper can turn that game around, and it's a powerful card to protect you and to give you an option to win a game that you would have otherwise lost. Foe Reaper is not necessarily the type of card that you play it and then it, you know, it's your win condition for winning the game. No, the win condition actually is just overall value of your minions, trading upward, buffing minions on minions on minions, all this layers of buffing. You end up with these strong boards, and you just push the enemy into a corner, and they can't get out of it. And Foe Reaper, a lot of times I'll keep it in my hand, and it comes out when I have somehow lost control of the board. Now, the other thing I want to say about Foe Reaper is you have to put pressure on the enemy enough that they've used most of their removals. You know, if you play Foe Reaper and it gets removed instantly by a spell, that kind of says something in itself, because most classes, they don't really have that many hard removal spells. So if they were able to deal with everything and they haven't used their other hard removal spell, you kind of have to wonder, you know, maybe you weren't doing that well anyway, and you did not effectively put enough pressure on the enemy, either because just luck wasn't on your side, or maybe you didn't make the most efficient trades. But sometimes you play Foe Reaper and it gets removed. You know, yeah, sure, that happens. But with a 6/9 stat line, you know, you did what you could to make it not be removed. You know, no minion is foolproof. Anything can be removed. It's just, you know, it's just about playing something that is not easily removed, and it's not easily removed. Faith Jr. says, so I tried this deck. I fell from rank 5 to rank 18. I don't know what was happening, but every draw I seem to get has zero impact on the board or anything in my hand. I watched the videos, read the tips. Needless to say, I won't be using this deck. Well, you know, to that I would say you can't please everyone. It sounds a bit, to be honest, from my perspective, it sounds a bit dramatic to say that, you know, everything you're playing gets zero impact and that you fell from rank 5 to rank 18. That really sounds far-fetched, and I would fair to say that it's just a lie, because to say you fell from rank 5 to rank 18, no, come on. I mean, if you're at rank 5, you know, you have some basic understanding of the game. You can't just fall back to rank 18. That's like as low as the game can go, almost. That's ridiculous. Anyone who's been to rank 5 knows that, you know, that's just banter. And to say that your cards have zero impact, that has nothing to do with Holy 4000. That is just being dramatic, you know. That's just a ridiculous claim, really. And you can't please everyone. I'm not even out here to try to please everyone. There are some people out there right now who swear up and down, God is their witness, that Patron Warrior is one of the weakest decks they've seen. They played it, they can't win with it, and that's just a crap deck, a gimmick deck. And there's people out there who claim Handlock is bad, and folks who claim Demon Lock is crap. So you can't please everyone, even when a deck is you know, even if it was the strongest deck in the meta. There were people who swore up and down Miracle Rogue was terrible, even when it was dominating the meta. You know, that's all I can really say about that. PNA says, this is a Priest lover's deck. Priest has always been my favorite, but it's so hard to do well with in the current meta until this deck. The best part of this deck is watching the confusion of other players, as this deck is in no way a typical Priest deck. And says some other things, and then he goes on to say, if you're new to Priest, you have to be patient, as this deck requires patience. And you keep telling yourself that this is not a control deck, this is not a control deck. I don't have Foe Reaper yet, but I've had good results with Kel'Thuzad, as the guy points out, is still out of big game hunter range. Thanks for making this deck and making Priest fun again. Thank you very much, PNA. You are absolutely correct. This is definitely one of those decks where you have to tell yourself, this is not a control deck. This is not a control deck. One of the issues that I have seen from watching other players attempt to play Holy 4000, and some of them were doing it incorrectly, is that they're over controlling the board. That's not how you win with this deck. That's how you win with typical Priest decks that run things like, you know, Akanai and Light Warden and, you know, Injured Blade Master, Double Circle Hills, Mind Control, Cabal Shadow Priest. Control everything. Everything. You know, just everything. You control it all. That's how you win. Holy 4000 is not a late game control deck. It is a mid game deck that can go late, but it's basically gets most of its strength in the mid game. And the way to win with it is by knowing when to stop controlling the board and get some face. Because at the end of the day, you don't win by controlling boards. You actually win by taking the person's hero's HP from 30 to 0. So, you know, a lot of times I'll see people do something like trade into Hunted Creepers, or trade into Harvest Golems, or trade into you know, Imp Gang bosses and things like that. Don't do that. If you can smack the enemy for some substantial damage, it's a mistake. It's a misplay. If you do things like that, you're going to make the game drag out too long, and then you're going to end up in a situation where eventually you do run out of steam. Now, this is especially true against control decks, particularly warrior control deck, handlock, taunt druid. You know, you have to go in and push forward, and you have to put a lot of pressure to their face so that they end up in a situation where they have to make non-efficient moves and non-efficient trades because you just have them down to 10 HP, and now they have to be careful. You know, the other reason why you need to be aware of this is because spare parts, you know, you end up with some spare parts in this deck, and a lot of times those spare parts can kill the enemy suddenly without warning, especially when you have a switching the spare part, the switches HP with health with damage. You can kill the enemy like really suddenly if you have that and you've been pushing forward on face damage. I get a lot of wins that way. So I would say that you do have to tell yourself this is not completely a control deck. You just control things that are going to give you big problems. So the rest of the time you need to hit the enemy, and you know, you chip away at their HP, and eventually you'll get them down. KT does have good results compared to Foe Reaper. There are some times where KT is even better. I just happen to stick with Foe Reaper, but because of its board clear capabilities. But KT is not bad, and as you say, it is out of big game hunter range. I'm going to do one more comment here. I substituted, Shumavness says, I substituted Mech Yeti with Jeeves as suggested. And since I had lost a lot of games due to lack of cards. The change has worked out really well for me. After long consideration, I switched the second Tinkertown for a Trogzer. I feel like I needed a second high value minion. It really screws up your opponent's game plan. And goes on to say that resurrecting this minion is also great. And you know, he's been switching shadow boxes for Noitrons and having some really good results. Well, to that I would say some people who haven't been running this deck for very long, those of you who have been running this deck for a long time, know that when this deck first came out, it used to run Jeeves, and Jeeves was a card draw engine for this deck because it doesn't have that much card draw. I still use Jeeves sometimes. I swear by that card. I've loved it. The reason that I actually took Jeeves out of the deck is because a lot of people had difficulty getting value off Jeeves because it takes some planning and it takes a little bit of getting used to, and it's a difficult card to use in this deck. But if you have a lot of experience with Priest and a lot of experience with this deck, you can use Jeeves and end up in some absolutely devastating advantages once you get the ball rolling, where you play it and the enemy can't really remove it, and you just keep drawing cards and drawing cards, and then you play more cards and then you draw more cards. It just ends up being a snowball victory, and I love Jeeves for that reason. But you know, for those of you who haven't tried Jeeves, give it a try. You know, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you, but I think it's worth at least a try. As for Trogzar, that one, that seemed a little weird to me. I don't really know how much viability Trogzar has in this deck because of the fact that it's a 6/6 at 7 mana. At 7 mana in this deck, you're kind of looking to do other things. I feel as though Trogzar is kind of like a prevention tool from the enemy using spells. I don't know if I really like that card, but you know, Shmovness swears by it, so you know, for those of you out there who might be interested in that, you might want to give that a try. Shadow boxers for Noitrons, that certainly is an option. I think if you're playing against a lot of having a problem with aggro decks and having a problem with burst damage decks, this could be a good move. I stick with the shadow boxers just because I like the 2/3 stat line more than the 1/2, but you know, this isn't horrible. That isn't not a horrible substitution. Oh yeah, and one last comment is Hi Day said, "Hi Marine, thanks for the 500th win using this deck." And then here I'm gonna end it off by showing you guys that he went Golden Priest with Holy 4000, which is really cool. I mean, if you're gonna get Gold Priest, do it in style. So I hope that I had a chance to address a couple of questions and comments, and you know, be sure to check out the Holy 4000 deck for yourself. And if you have questions or comments, go ahead and leave a reply, and I will get back with you and leave my reply as soon as I can, work permitting. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. MarineKing out.